Welcome back. Today, we're doing something a little different and, honestly, absolutely fascinating. We're going to demystify a really dense, highly cryptic ancient Chinese mnemonic poem about classical geography and feng shui. It's called the Lonto chapter of the Geographic three-character classic. If you've ever been curious about how ancient minds mapped out the physical world around them to find the literal perfect places to live, build, and settle, well, you are in exactly the right place for this explainer.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We're going on a highly structured zoom-in journey today. We'll start way up high with the cosmic origins of mountains, then decode the landscape codes, check out the geographic taboos to avoid, examine stars, shapes, and patterns, and finally, wrap up with the practitioner's 10 rules.
All right, part 1, Cosmic Origins of Mountains, from Heaven to Earth.
You know, ancient geometry always begins by looking at the big picture, the macro. Before you can even think about the dirt beneath your feet, you have to look at the massive cosmic forces of creation. The source text actually maps this out in a flowing timeline. It starts with the abstract. Heaven creates the images, and earth forms the physical shapes. Then the mythological Mount Sumeru rises, which gives way to the emergence of the vast Kunlun Mountains. The text traces how this massive terrestrial energy enters China, dividing into 3 main geographic branches before eventually flowing downward until the waters return to the sea. It's this continuous, beautiful descent of energy from the highest heavens all the way down to the oceans.
Now, to really get this, we have to clear up some cryptic ancient jargon right off the bat. When the text talks about a dragon, no, we're not talking about a mythical flying beast breathing fire. We're actually talking about massive geological formations. The dragon represents the macro veins, the continuous, undulating ridges of a mountain range that literally carry energy through the landscape. Moving right along to part 2, decoding the landscape codes, the 3s and 4s.
So, we've got the macro picture. Now let's zoom the camera in a bit. The ancient authors of this text absolutely loved categorization. They relied heavily on numeric codes to organize the chaos of nature, because, well, who doesn't love numbering everything? Let's start with the number 3. The text uses groups of 3 to categorize the flow of the land. It talks about the 3 endings, the 3 seekings, the 3 fallings, and the 3 postures of the landscape. It's essentially a structured way to read the rhythm of the mountain ranges as they twist, turn, and eventually come to a rest.
And what exactly are all those mountains twisting and turning toward? It's called the acupoint. Think of it literally like acupuncture, but on the Earth. The acupoint is the precise, final focal spot in the landscape where all that descending energy perfectly pools together. This makes it the absolute ideal, most auspicious location for a human dwelling or a burial site. It is the ultimate micro-destination of our entire geographical journey.
And right around our precious acupoint is another term we really need to clarify: sand. Now, forget about literal beach sand. In this context, sand refers to the specific hills, peaks, and terrain features that immediately encircle and protect our chosen spot. The sand is basically the environmental armor for the acupoint.
Let's move on and see how this builds as we transition from the 3s over to the code of 4. The text breaks down the landscape's specific developmental methods into these fascinating 4-part groups. Take a look at these 4 stages or passes that a mountain vein goes through before it finally settles down into an acupoint: conception, breath, pregnancy, and nurturing. I just love this part. It shows exactly how ancient people personified the Earth's geology. They didn't view the landscape as dead rock. They saw it as a living, breathing biological organism that literally gives birth to energy. And when that energy is fully nurtured and formed, the resulting acupoint takes on one of 4 foundational shapes: a nest, tongs, a breast, or a bump. Notice how deeply visual and metaphorical these ancient classifications are. You can instantly picture the sheltering curve of a nest or the distinct protrusion of a bump on a hillside.
All right, part 3, Geographic Taboos to Avoid, the 5s.
It's not all just perfectly balanced energy and nurturing Earth, though. This is where the text gets really serious and tells us what environments are actually dangerous. Ancient geomancers used sets of 5 to identify strict taboos. These were landscapes that had to be avoided at all absolute costs if you wanted to survive and thrive.
Now, what's really interesting here is the sharp contrast between the types of water. The text outlines 4 auspicious, beneficial waters. These are calm waters that are greeting, converging, and gently pooling near your site. But compare that to the 5 uninvadable waters: rushing, reversing, rolling, cutting, and drenching. The text strictly warns against these violently destructive, highly unpredictable hydrological forces.
And that exact same logic applies directly to the mountains. The text details the 5 unburiable mountains. Basically, you cannot settle on a mountain that is bare, purely stony, passing by without stopping, or curving, completely isolated from other ranges, or physically severed and broken. These barren, fractured landscapes were considered dead zones for human settlement, purely because they cannot hold or generate energy.
Moving into Part 4, Stars, Shapes, and Patterns.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the poem actually visualizes the invisible. It maps 8 specific Chinese characters right onto physical landscape counterparts. Notice how visual this matrix is. The character Ge visually represents a mountain vein branching out. Gong looks like a gorge bridging 2 areas. Zhi zigzags exactly like a winding river. The text is literally turning the strokes of written language into a map of the terrain.
But you might be wondering, how do you know when you've actually found that perfect spot based on this map? Well, that brings us to the number 6, which outlines the precise physical dynamics required when you finally locate the acupoint. For a location to truly be viable, you need these 6 physical interactions happening all around you. The top of the terrain must cover you, the bottom must support you, the front must naturally join together, the back must clearly divide, the left side must wrap around, and the right side must greet you. When all that happens, it creates this perfectly sheltered, highly protected microenvironment. And as wildly complex as all of this is, the text distills all that diverse geography equally into just 5 foundational shapes: square, round, curved, straight, and pointed. But what's absolutely mind-blowing is how the text then takes these earthly shapes and intricately links them upwards to the 7 and 9 celestial stars, completely connecting the physical dirt beneath us to the cosmos above. Finally, Part 5, The Practitioner's 10 Rules. Pulling the camera all the way back down to the human element, we hit our final numerical code, 10. This is the true climax of the text, because suddenly the focus shifts entirely from analyzing the land to examining the mind and the approach of the practitioner themselves. So the crucial point is this: literally none of this geographical knowledge matters without the right character. The text points out that practitioners need to actively cultivate their mind, measure their own ability with real humility, and most importantly, prefer a true, small spot of land over greedy, foolish choices. To truly understand the earth, you cannot be consumed by greed. Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. We've talked about strict warnings against harsh, violent waters, barren, broken landscapes, and the absolute necessity of restraining our own human greed. So, beyond the ancient mysticism of dragons and acupoints, aren't these really just the universal rules for environmental psychology, urban planning, and living in ethical harmony with nature? It is just incredible how relevant this ancient map remains today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you next time.